Hello again, and welcome to another episode of the Pitt Panthers Weekly, presented by Arsenal Cider House, home of Western Pennsylvania's first and best cidery, with three great locations: one in the South Hills, Trax Farm, Wexford, Sorgel Farms, and lastly in Lawrenceville. That's the original. Go check it out. They have normally 8 to 10 great ciders, meads, and wines on tap at all times. So got to go down, got to check it out. We'll be on location again in about a week. So pretty excited about that, to get back in the full swing of things. But in the meantime, I'll be doing the show from the road, actually. I'm actually doing it from the Oval in Squirrel Hill at the soccer fields, believe it or not. I guess on location on an icy soccer field. But anyways, we'll dive right into to the Pitt Panthers basketball team this week. It was a tough week, another one, and it's going to continue being this way for a little while. There's just no doubt about it. Pitt played Syracuse earlier in the week at the Dome, and they played Duke at Cameron Indoor yesterday on Saturday. Let's go back to the Syracuse game first. It was a coming out party, I guess you could call it, for Pitt's best 3-point shooter they've had in years, and it's exciting that he's so young. Parker Stewart is probably the best 3-ball shooter Pitt has had on campus. I don't remember a better 3-ball shooter that Pitt's had on campus in recent years. Even during the Howland-Dixon era, I don't remember a better 3-ball shooter. It's nothing but net. It's a beautiful follow through. I mean, it is a great looking stroke, and yes, of course, I'm picking some positives because that's a huge positive. He is so good, and he has so much potential. He scored. If I'm not mistaken, it was his biggest game. He scored 23 points. He was 8 of 14 in the game. 7 of which was at 6. 6 of which were 3-pointers. He was that good during that game. He was really, honestly, his 23 points was more than half of the overall Pitt total. It was a bad shooting night for both teams. Syracuse won 59-45. Pitt was in it for most of it, but Syracuse is, I guess it's how they play their zone that gave them trouble, more trouble than I expected. Syracuse came in losers of a few games in a row and not playing well either. They're an offensively challenged team, so I expected, to be honest, better. But on the road, it's still hard to win. It's a game that I think they can win if they come back. When the Panthers come home, which they'll play them on the 27th, where they'll be hosting them, and I think that is a game. I don't want to say winnable, but I believe it's a winnable game for them. With that said, it was a tough one. It was still a tough game because offensively they just didn't make buckets. They went long scoring droughts, and this is just how it's going to be for this team throughout the rest of the season. It's just how it's going to be. Though I will tell you, they played better in that Syracuse game. They played better defensively, which was encouraging. And they took that to the Duke game. And Duke went on one of their runs in the first half. But Pitt hung tough for, I'd say, for the first 10 or 12 minutes. It actually took a late surge in that first half of that Duke game before, Duke kind of pulled away. Duke was up 38-26 They scored the last 10 points. Pitt didn't score another bucket for the rest of the half. I think it was a 5-minute span, and it just killed them. I mean, it just killed any momentum they had. They were pulling back into the game. They were hitting threes. Parker Stewart, once again, playing very well. He was Pitt's leading scorer with 15 points. Kenny Chukwuka had 8 rebounds. He was also called for a flagrant foul. A complete horse crap call against, Allen of Duke. Said he tripped him. The fact is, Allen, he clipped him. He did clip him, but not on purpose. You could definitely tell it wasn't on purpose. But when you slowed it down, you can depict anything when you slow it down. You can change an opinion. You can do all kinds of stuff. It was really, it was frustrating to watch and why, because that turned the game. That was the bucket that turned the game or helped turn the game because, it was, Grayson Allen hits 2 free throws and they get the ball. So, it gave them instant momentum to offset what Pitt was doing. So, frustrating. But Marcus Carr had a tough game. I'd say that's 2 in a row for him. He did have 12 points. He only had 2 assists, though. They were on him. He was 0 for 3 from three-point range. The team as a whole only shot 25% from three-point range in the first half. That's what was keeping them in the game. They've got three-point shooters. They've got guys who can make shots. Cameron Davis is another guy who can make threes. When they're open and they can create, they're good. They can score. But and Pitt had several really good offensive trips down the floor. The problem is they just didn't have enough. They had too many empty trips. They had too many turnovers once again, which is not. You can't do that. You just can't do it in the ACC. You can't do it against good teams. There's no way around it. For the game, Pitt shot 40%. Duke as a whole shot 51%. I mean, they took 7 more shots, made 9 more than Pitt. You want to know the difference? That's the difference. They also made 12 of 26 from 3. It's just really hard to come back from that. Really, really difficult to come back from that. As I said, though, for the most part, they played well in that first half. Duke drifted at the end. It's going to happen. It's a frustrating deal, but it's going to happen. This week was, like I said, going to be difficult with those 2 road games. But Pitt now comes back home for the next 2 weeks, or for the next 2 games. They host NC State. NC State's really good. On the 24th, they host NC State at 9 o'clock. And they have a 4 o'clock game, as I said, with Syracuse on the 27th. The Syracuse game, in my opinion, is a winnable game. NC State they're going to have to get big contributions offensively, much bigger than they've been getting, much more consistent. They got those 2 home games before they have to travel to Miami on the 31st. And then to North Carolina, and then to Clemson. So Pitt's got a tough stretch. I mean, there are just no gimmies. There are no gimmies in the ACC this year. There are just none. Pitt's had to learn trial by fire, and that's kind of the way it's been. But there have been some bright spots. We talked about Parker Stewart. I think Brown has played fairly well. When you break down his game as a whole, Terrell Brown, I mean, he had 6 points in the he had 6 points and 6 rebounds in the game against Syracuse, but that's going to be a tougher game for him because getting the ball underneath in the, with that zone that they play is very difficult. It's not an easy thing, especially for a whole group of, big group of freshmen like the Panthers have. And I need to just start calling them young players as the Panthers have. I mean, these guys are just starting to learn these teams. And that's the other part of this too, is, we talked about in the beginning of the year, we talked about how young they are and how, they've got to learn to play together and they've got to learn the teams a little bit that they're starting to play. Well, none of these players have ever seen any of these ACC teams. None of these young kids. And, you combine that with everything else that is going on, it's tough to think, that they can, just come out and perform at a high level. You can hope for it, but it's, it's tough. Pitt's starting five is pretty good. I mean, I like their starting five. They can hang tough. It's when they start going to the bench where things start going awry. When they take Marcus Carr out of the game, when he goes out of the game, they put in Milligan, who is a senior, has some experience, but he's proving on the court why he never got any playing time under Dixon and why he didn't get any playing time last year or much playing time last year. He's proven it. He is not a good fill-in. He does not distribute the ball well. He's a great kid. When you listen to him in the interviews and talk to him, he's a great kid. But, when you talk about just play, and against a, like a mid-major team, he can probably play pretty well. But when you throw him to the wolves and play him up against players like Duke can throw at you, he plays out of control. He tries to do too much. He doesn't at all play within the scheme. He turns the ball over with regularity. Does not shoot well. And that's why his playing time has shrunk so much over the past several weeks, or since the ACC season started. One of the other, Milligan in his last game in Syracuse, he got 3 minutes. Shamil Stevens only got 14. I've expected more from him in his time. He shows great flashes, but in that forward position, he's paired up against, when they play Duke. I mean, he's got to go up against the likes of Bagley and Carter, and good luck with that. I mean, everybody wants Pitt's lost by 28 or 29 and 27 and to Duke. Well, Duke's got 5 NBA freshmen, and Grayson Allen, oh, by the way, is also going to play in the NBA. He's going to be a punk. He's like he is now, but he's going to play in the NBA. All these kids, all those players are going to play in the NBA. Pitt's got 3- and 4-star kids on their team. A couple of 2-stars, but mostly 3- and 4-star kids. Well, those are good recruits, normally, when you've got a core of returning players. But they don't have a core of returning players. So those 3- and 4-star kids are being asked to do a lot, carry a lot. They're carrying all the water, not some of the water. They're carrying it all up and down the hill from the well. And it's just, at times it looks good and at times it looks bad. And that's just what you're going to get. I've had several conversations on and off Twitter and with several coaches outside of the school, outside of the team and on other teams. And I've had many conversations about the coaching staff that Pitt's put in there and what my thoughts were on Stallings and I hear a lot of fans calling for his head. They need to fire him. They need to fire him. Why did they hire him? We talk about this every week. The fact is, they'll put themselves farther behind if they do that. Getting rid of Stallings right now would be the worst thing for this program. It may not make sense to say that, but it would be the absolute worst thing. I don't think what he's doing is bad. I don't think the work that the kids are putting in is bad. They work hard. They play hard. They were playing hard all the way up into the end yesterday. They played hard all the way up into the end in Syracuse. These kids don't give up. They try hard every game. They just don't have enough weapons right now, enough experienced weapons right now. That'll change. That'll change in a year. That'll absolutely change in a year. With Ryan Luther coming back in, he will more than likely get approved for his time. But with Ryan Luther coming back, they have a couple of really good a couple of transfers coming in. They have a really good freshman coming. This team has lots and lots of. I think the future's bright. The problem is it's tough to see it. It's tough for a fan to put themselves in a position to say, I feel good about this team. I feel good about where this team can go, and I feel good about where they are going. But right now, it's tough to look at them and say that if you're looking at them from a fan's perspective. And I get the outrage and I get the frustration, but they were going to be in this position whether Kevin Stallings came in or whoever came in. They were going to be in this spot. Cameron Johnson was going to leave regardless because he did not want to play for a team that was going to have this many incoming freshmen and no experience. This was all going to happen. So it was just who was going to be at the helm. And unfortunately for some, it's Kevin Stallings. I have no problem with it. The guy's doing fine. He's got a nice offensive scheme. He just needs more scores. He's going to get that. He needs more experience, and he's going to get that. So I think all in all, it's status quo. They've got a couple of winnable games coming, or one winnable game coming. NC State not so much, but that shouldn't be that may not be a rout. Whereas I believe the Syracuse game, if Pitt can play like they did the other night against Syracuse, only do it at home in front of their fans and shoot and make some baskets, I think that is a winnable game for this team. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. I'm not calling any predictions right now, but I believe it is winnable. That's what I see as far as, looking ahead. So that's what you got. You got Syracuse Wednesday. You got, is it Syracuse Wednesday? Let me make sure I'm getting it right. I said it earlier, but I want to make sure it's right. Yes, we've got NC State Wednesday. We got Syracuse Saturday. So that's it. I mean, that's it for this week's version of Pitt Panthers Weekly. I appreciate you dialing in. Hoping to be able to get back in studio or actually on location at the Arsenal Cider House in the South Hills with my partner in crime, Zach. So dial in next week. We're hoping to be able to do this in prime time next Wednesday or Thursday night at the Arsenal Cider House in the South Hills at Trax Farms. Once again, thank you to Arsenal for sponsoring us. We're going to start our giveaways next week, and we look forward to hearing from you. Dial in, enjoy the podcast, and we'll see you next week on Pitt Panthers Weekly.